Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And there it is. And he's back. He's back, everyone. This is the second time. Who am I talking to? Who's my guest today? Let me reintroduce you to him. He is an influential content marketing thought leader, like so much influence. And you know what? Every time since the last episode we were on and we were chatting together, I keep seeing him on social. He's either liking my stuff or he's retweeting it, and he's everywhere. He's everywhere in every conversation, and I'm amazed by it. A lot of people are top 14 content marketer, top 100 digital marketer, top 40 B2B marketer, author of the #1 content performance culture, chief content marketing officer for the Authentic Storytelling Project. My friend, Christoph Trappe. How are you, sir? Welcome back.
Doing great. Hey, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, man. Like I had to, because I kept seeing you on there, and what's cool about it is it kept reminding me, like, hey man, I gotta hang out. We had a good time chatting last time, and I was like, let's do that again. And there's so many more things I can learn from you at the same time, and we can hang out, talk about more things. So I just thought, let's do this. And so, but even though this is your second time, I need to pass this thing to you. So let me grab this real quick. Okay, here you go. You got it? Thor's hammer. Take that and smash again. Some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, some misconceptions. Help us clear up the air here.
Yeah. So the one thing that's top of mind right this second, Casey, is social media followings, right? And back in the day when we all started going on social media, yes, you had to grow your social following. And I'm not saying that's bad to do, but it shouldn't be a top priority, quite frankly. Back in the organic era, what would happen is you had a big following, they would all see your posts. And today, just because you have a big following doesn't mean anyone will see your post. People follow things by topic now on Twitter and LinkedIn and those kind of places. So it doesn't mean that people see it just because you have more followers. Now, chances are the numbers go up, but it's not a given. So just something to keep top of mind, that it's not the same what it used to be, 10 years ago or 8 years ago or whatever it's been. And think about, what goal are you trying to accomplish? Don't just go, well, my goal is to increase my Twitter following. What are you trying to accomplish? Who are you trying to reach? And then go after them, especially on Twitter. The topics, it's like I'm seeing stuff more and more from people I don't even follow, but I follow the topic, so I see their stuff, and it's good and bad, I guess.
So it's changing. It's changed already, I guess. It's kind of cool to hear you smash this myth, because you're so good at it. You would expect someone to say, oh no, social is the most important thing in your life. But you're saying, look, things are changing. It's not yesterday's Twitter. It's a different kind of environment, different platforms, and they're not playing nice necessarily. Oh, I have 100 followers, so they'll all see my message. Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, and especially, now with the algorithms, I mean, you might post 5 things and they'll see number 5 first, and they'll see number 3 next, and number 1 next.
Really?
That's another thing to keep in mind, right? Just because you posted in a certain time frame doesn't mean they'll see it like that, which is what, when I say that, I laugh when people ask me, what's the best time to post on Twitter? What's the best time to post on Instagram? What's the best time to blog? What's the best time to publish a podcast? And I am planning on doing an article on authenticstorytelling.net. Might be out by now, but on when is the best time to publish a podcast? And what's interesting? It's like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's like everybody publishes their podcast on those days. So when I publish my podcast on Sunday morning, because nobody publishes their podcast on Sunday, so I'm getting ahead, right? And when people have their notifications turned on, they'll see mine as opposed to 17 notifications on a Monday morning. I'll hold my breath. At some point, it'll change. There'll be some algorithm involved on podcasts as well. But right now, if you're going to argue with me over when should we publish something, podcast might actually be the one channel where it still matters, but all the other stuff doesn't matter. I mean, even email, please tell everybody, Casey, stop emailing me on Monday mornings. I know you guys
Right.
like that time, but stop.
Well, what happens is then you hear on a podcast like this, oh, no, actually do Thursday morning, or something. And then everyone does that. And then
Yeah.
now it's crowded and then it doesn't work anymore. I'm with you on that. Almost the timing doesn't matter. Email, you can't really send it multiple times, but I know on social you can. In fact, I think I've seen you tweet the same thing a couple times. What's your take on that? It's no longer, I have to have this pure feed with only one share. I mean, do you share multiple times on every platform?
Oh yeah, of course. I put it up in the queue, and there you go. It keeps going. And the only people that complain about it are the social media purists who don't participate themselves, quite frankly, right? And I've done it for many years, and the complaints have been a handful. And usually, it's those people that really don't know, or they're not even doing it themselves. So really quickly on email, though, you can't send the same email more than once. And here's how you do it.
Yeah.
And actually, who are the real email experts are Rob and Kennedy, the email marketing show. If you haven't talked to them,
Oh,
they're
cool.
over in the UK. They're pretty knowledgeable.
Were they called
And
Rob and Kennedy?
Rob and Kennedy. It's like Madonna, right? They only go by their first names. The email marketing show. I can connect you on. I can send you a link on LinkedIn. And so let's say you send an email on Tuesday, and 20% open it, right, or whatever it might be, and then the 80% that don't open it or don't do anything with it. Why don't you resend that same email to them on Thursday or Friday or even next Tuesday? I don't care, but you can do that, right? Because they haven't, in theory, haven't seen it. Now it's not perfect.
That's a good call,
right? Because I look at emails all the time on preview, and if I don't want to click, I'll delete them. But here's the reality: I get so many emails that if you send me the same email again 5 days later, I probably won't remember that email anyways. So I won't be offended, but so try that.
That's a good call, man. You're right. You could actually just keep sending it, treating an inbox like a Twitter feed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Is there a rule of thumb? And you mentioned it goes into your magic queue and it just goes and goes. Do you just blast it ad nauseum, or like, is there 5, or is there a certain number where you're like, okay, they've probably seen it by now?
So what I do is, I use Buffer, right? And I put things in a queue. There's a certain cadence every day. I think Twitter is like 10 posts a day. LinkedIn is 2, Facebook is 2, something like that. And so whenever I publish something new, or whenever I hear something worthwhile sharing, I'll put it in the queue. And I got the plan where I got 100 updates in my queue, and I usually hit that. And when I hit it, then I kind of have to relax for a little bit and let them catch up. Of course, you can buy a bigger plan, but yeah. So I hear something, like I listen to podcasts all day long while I'm working. I hear something interesting. I got some open slots. I'll just get it in there. So it's, I don't overthink it. How often am I going to send something? If I hear something I think is worth sharing and I got some open slots, I put it in there. On Twitter, honestly, 100 posts, and I publish 10 a day. So if I publish something today and I add it to the end of the queue, that actually doesn't go out until 10 days from now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on Facebook and LinkedIn, it's only 2 a day. So whatever that math is, that's like 50 days. If I publish something today and add it at the end, it doesn't even go until 50 days from now, which is interesting. I did a podcast with Patty Shada, the Business Storytelling Podcast, Casey, and we talked about how bosses need to do a better job collaborating with their teams, right? Instead of saying, "Oh, why don't you guys think about what we should do?" But they already have the answer, so they're wasting everybody's time. And so when I pitched, me too, right? But it's not a good strategy.
No, it's not.
It's if you apologize later, you might be able to recover, but it can be a real problem. Pass it on. It's the same thing on social. Sometimes people see a post and they'll message me and they'll go, "I saw you post." Like the other day, actually, I have a call later today. It was somebody, and they said, "Well, I want to catch up and maybe we can work together." Blah blah blah. I saw. Good to see you in my feed. I have no idea what they saw. Do you know what I mean? Like I wrote it 50 days ago. I think it was on LinkedIn, even though I can probably guess. But it's kind of interesting because that time delay is a real thing. when you do it like
So if
that.
they just say, "Hey, great post," you're like, "Oh man,
I just say thanks.
thanks, buddy." But what'd you like about it? Oh, I really liked it. Blah blah blah.
So I usually don't ask that because here's why, because I don't know that usually I don't think people want to have a big discussion about it. You know what I mean?
True.
Drives me crazy when people come to me and say, well, so like I voted in a poll and somebody goes, well, I saw you, how you voted. Why did you feel that way? I'm like, I just voted in your poll. Like,
Right. They're trying to
you
drum
know,
up some engagement or something. I hear you.
yeah,
Like I just clicked your poll. And that was 2 seconds. I don't mind doing that, but I don't have time
yeah.
to get in this debate here. Yeah. Yeah. You remember there was like a Budweiser commercial maybe back in the day when they had good advertising, probably before they got purchased by the European taskmasters. I don't know. But there was this guy in a bar and some guy walks in and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And instead of being like, "What's up?" back, he like thought it was like a real question. So he's like, "Oh, what's up? Well, I'll tell you what's up. Today I'm doing this and this and this. And how
Right.
about you? How are you doing?" It's like, no, I was just saying hi. I was just saying what's up. It
Yeah.
wasn't really meaning to say anything more.
Right.
That was happening on social too. It's like, oh, I just saying hi, just saying I see you.
And so that drives me crazy when sometimes I post something like, like a one line soundbite or something. And then somebody will go, can you give me an example? Can you elaborate? And I'm like,
Oh,
no, you
can
know,
can you elaborate? Really? You got some cool people engaging with you. That's interesting.
I guess.
I do. I heard this. I've heard that people like to respond. I mean, Facebook does this too. People
Uh-huh.
like to respond to stuff they disagree with. They get more discussion out of it. And I realized Sangram had some recent tweets where he was posting these polls about like what's most important about ABM or what's
Yeah.
like 3 of the answers were terrible. And one of the answers, and it was like anyone that doesn't pick this answer is terrible. But like it almost like incensed me to write. I
Yeah.
wrote that. I wrote like, well, we know one of these answers is accurate, but maybe I just fell into that trap of, I saw things I disagreed with. Do you do anything like that, or do you just kind of play it more straight?
Yeah. So I think we want engagement on the web, obviously.
Yeah.
So some people, I can already, when I said that earlier, I can see some people go, well, doesn't he want engagement? Like whatever.
Right? See, they would
And,
engage just to
and
tell you that.
right. And I do, but a lot of this engagement online has just turned into, I mean, the digital lynch mob, you know what I mean?
Right.
Uh like it's just a mess. Like people are arguing over the stupidest things. People are going off topic. So it kind of depends. I mean, every once in a while, if somebody, engages in a meaningful way, I'll do it. Or if they have a question, I guess that's probably better engagement.
Hmm.
But if somebody just says, can you elaborate? I'm like, I literally, that's what I wrote. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, that's the tweet I meant to send. Or like people will say, well, I disagree with that. And that's fine. They can say that, but why do I have to write back? Oh, okay, but I don't agree with you, Um, and then the latest thing that I've noticed is people are just going off topic. So I'll give you an example. So marketers, right? So I follow marketers, I follow sports journalists, those kind of things. And I've seen some of them who are just going off topic. So there's marketers, right? And
Yeah.
all these marketers know, and we don't have to get into what you and I think about the topic, but this whole debate in the US about whether you wear a mask or whether you don't wear a mask, whether the
Sure.
government should have a law and blah, blah, blah. The mayor is doing a law and the governor says, no, you can't do that. It's my call. I mean, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But for marketers, unless you're talking about how to do marketing with your mask, you should not be tweeting about masks. Like we don't need marketers unless they're talking about their topic, tweeting about masks. We don't. It's not on topic, right? I'm not following you, so you can tell me to wear a mask or not to wear a mask. And I'm seeing that more and more out there. Like, people are going, like, this is who they are, and I get it. Like, I post some things too that are kind of off topic, but I'll give you an example. I go to my kids' softball games, right? And on Facebook and Instagram, which are less professional. I
Right.
do post a little bit more personal things, but every once in a while I post something from softball to Twitter, like the GIF
Yeah.
pitch, right? Because
Oh,
I'm
I've
like,
seen some of
you
those.
know,
I don't know which, maybe Instagram or something, but I've seen some of the
yeah,
softball. Those are, yeah.
yeah. But see, like I would think marketers would care about that, right? Because hey, how do you do a GIF on Twitter? Super easy. You take a picture in the live function on your iPhone, you upload the picture, and you click GIF, and now you created a GIF. Super easy.
Whoa.
Do you see what I mean? Like that's
Can
still
you say
on
that again?
topic. Yeah. So on your iPhone, you take a
Yeah.
picture in the live function. So
Sorry,
for
Android.
example,
You suck.
yeah. So I don't know how you do on the Android, but so basically, so if I go like this, right? I take a live picture and I go like this,
Yep.
like I
Yeah.
lift my hands. I know some people are
Yeah.
listening. So that now becomes a GIF if I take that picture in the live function.
Just
And all you,
automatically? It's stored as like
well,
an animated GIF kind of thing, or
no, it's
no?
stored as a live
Oh,
sequence, right? So it's a
yeah,
bunch
yeah.
of pictures. But then when you upload it to Twitter, all you do is you push the little button at the bottom that says GIF, and Twitter turns it into a GIF.
Thank you,
And
Twitter.
super easy, right?
Nice.
It's like the
Yeah.
easiest way. So sometimes, like when somebody sends me something, and again, I'm trying to recover from all the people sending me hate mail already about not responding on social. Sometimes when somebody says something good to me that I want to respond to, I send them a GIF, and I just go, or like, or I smile or something like that,
Yeah.
or like you go. I mean, that's hard to take a picture of if you're clapping, but that's a good way to respond. The other way, which I don't actually have on my main account, I have it on I got a travel account, ctrap_travel. Audio tweets are a fantastic way to engage now. So
Hmm.
you're basically recording a quick audio message, and that tweets back to people.
Do you do video with that, or it's
No,
just
just
audio?
audio. It's audio tweets. Yep. It's brand new. I do have an article on authenticstorytelling.net if you want to check it out,
Nice.
how to do it.
AuthenticStorytelling.net. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, do you do the whole like animated? So it has a visual to it where you see like the bars moving as your voice talks, or is it
Yeah,
just
exactly.
okay? So it's not just like here's my little square wave file I'm sending to you. It's like it's articulated.
It looks a little nicer, but that it's
Nicer. Yeah.
basically a dressed up WAV file or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll check that one out. That's cool. Um, Interesting. Yeah, we're gonna get to into audio in a little bit. I wanted to kind of follow back, maybe a little devil's advocate situation with you on
Yeah.
the social advocacy. Maybe is how you could describe it. How do you know? And maybe this is an impossible question, but like, let's do it. How do you know when someone marketer is kind of like doing the right thing, like using their voice to get the message out versus they're kind of like capitalizing on like a tragedy, or they're
Yeah.
just sort of they're just kind of and that can get gross. Like there's sort of a range, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I saw one time, I complained about this earlier, I think it was like a Charmin toilet paper ad, and they were like, oh, we're all in this together, and I'm like, Charmin, like, you're toilet paper, and we need you, but now there's plenty of you, and like there's nothing that you're doing right now other than keeping our butts clean. That, like, I don't know, it felt a little weird, and I think we all got used to those
Yeah.
ads that were running, whichever the recent things that have happened, because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Like the ad, and you're like, nah, do they really care? Don't they? Or it's like, no, we need to wear a mask because we want to think this thing to end soon. It's kind of,
Yeah.
how do you draw the line yourself, and what do you advise clients?
So first of all, Charmin is interesting. I don't know if I heard it on your show or another show, but somebody said they have a really nice voice pre-COVID, and they don't know what they've done in during COVID. And Charmin paused everything during COVID.
Okay.
I didn't see any posts. I could be wrong. You can pull it up and see.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
But I haven't seen anything from them. Like they haven't made any smart comments like they used to, but they did used to all the time. But the trick is you have to figure out what you're going to do, and then you got to be careful how you roll it out. I'll give you an example. I think it was Coca-Cola who said we're going to not do any advertising for the next whatever because of I think it was like George Floyd or something, and I don't know which one it was, but
Yeah.
because of one of those, they paused advertising, and then of course their ads were still running. So I saw an ad, and somebody else posted it too. There was still an ad running, and they had already announced that they were pausing all ads. So it looks really bad. And it's because we sometimes, I don't know anything about how Coca-Cola runs their shop, honestly, but
Yeah.
probably what happened, Casey, is somebody made that decision. The PR team wrote the tweet that they're pausing it. They got everything out right away. And then somebody else has to tell another team, who then has to tell the agency to pause all the ads, right?
Right.
Instead of just going like, I got Google ads pulled up right here. So if I needed to pause it right now, I just go in here and pause it, right? Like I could literally do it right this second. So you want to think about that. And on the other side, there is a difference between just trying to capitalize and being authentic. And one thing I love about podcasts is it's really hard to hide your true self. So some people will say, you know what I mean? Like some people will say, this Trav, what's he talking about? Blah, blah, blah. I don't like him. I don't like his Milwaukee head. See, I'm wearing this in honor of Major League Baseball back.
Oh, nice.
So that's not my team, but it's the only clean head that was nearby. But anyway, but people can hear it and they can try to understand the context and they can hear, do I like Casey? Could I work with him? Okay, I like him, or I don't like him. And that's what I love about these shows. The true person or persons behind the brain come through. Right. So don't just try to capitalize it, but if you have something to say that is truly helpful, say it, right? Say it in a way that's helpful. And I'll give you an example. I did a business storytelling podcast episode with Nick Westergaard and Leanne Edens about the Washington Redskins rebrand. And we talked about that, right? But we also talked about what goes into a rebrand and how much work is involved and what do you do and how do you do it and blah, 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 blah. And of course, most of us, when we do a rebrand, we do it behind closed doors, right? And the Washington rebrand is like totally public. I mean, everything is public, like what people think about it, what they think the name should be. Right. People run out and they buy the trademark.
I know. It's tough. Like if you did it totally public, let's vote between this, and this, you'd have to already have all the copyrights, all the trademarks and all those things because some guy would gobble them up. I hear some guy already has previously, like 10 years ago, gobbled up everything he could think of, like Washington Cougars, Washington Bears, like all the different things, in hopes that one day they'll change and they'll need to come knock on his door. And
then just early July, when all this was announced, somebody bought Red Wolves and other names that were apparently in the running. Of course, we don't know what's in the running. And now they've announced that they will be going by the Washington football team for the foreseeable future, and then they'll come up with another name.
Okay, so they're playing a long game on that.
They are, and if you think about it, it's not I've been watching the Redskins since I've grown up. Since a kid, and you know what? I will probably buy a hat that says Washington football team, and then next year, whatever they become, I'll probably buy that hat too.
Really? Yeah, I could see that. It's like a collector item, right? This is the unnamed team.
Yeah. Kind of wish they would have called it Washington Football Club and not Washington Football Team, but
right.
That's a little
kind of like soccer. I guess. But would that get confusing with soccer branding? You'd think like, oh, we got a football team now. Football is coming to Washington.
Only if you're in Italy.
Do they have one? Do they have a football soccer team?
They do. I don't know what they're called, but they do.
So, what's your? What would you go with? And you have any advice for the Redskins? And obviously, we'll check out this podcast. We'll link to it.
I don't know. DC United is the soccer team.
Oh, DC United. Okay. Yeah.
Which is funny because the Onion immediately tweeted a headline saying Washington Redskins decide to rename to DC Redskins.
DC Redskins. Oh, right.
Yeah. Instead of changing the Redskins, they changed
that would be something that corporate would do, right? Like, well, we've got to change the name, forgetting the reason why they're changing the name.
Right. I wish they'd keep it. It is what it is. Unfortunately, I know some people say the history is not going to go away, but it is what it is.
It is a consumer brand, so it's kind of like, I think I knock those things less if they're a consumer brand. Things that don't require consumers to know one thing or the other, you can probably just stay with something. But like, I think what it wasn't it like Nike dropped like Nike stopped, and then when the
Everybody,
sponsors, everyone kind of piled
Nike,
on. What are you
yeah,
gonna do? I guess at that point,
right. Yep.
yeah. Well, they could just send them up to New Hampshire. Have 12 people attend, but no one will attend. They're all already at a Patriots game, or they're going to be going to some, car racing, some NASCAR event, so they don't have time for the. Wouldn't it be funny though if they called it like DC United?
That's the soccer team
I
already,
know,
though.
but they just told, sorry, soccer, you're just going to have to.
Oh, I don't know if they suck or not, but
You're just going to have to pick something else because we're going to take over this trademark.
right.
Move over. They
bought
the soccer team just to get the name, and then they renamed them something else.
They're DC United fourth place in Group B.
Oh, gotcha.
But they didn't look like they played very many games. 3 games.
The New England Revolution, which I think is a cool name.
Yeah.
Revolution. Okay. All right. So podcast, you can't hide your true self. Poor Redskins down there needing to figure themselves out. Are they the same group? Didn't they have some like allegations of like being a terrible place to work for women? Which
15 women. Yeah. 15
geez,
women.
They're having a bad day, but maybe they earned it. But either way,
they got some problems to work through
brand
for
hits.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Meanwhile, we're up here in New England, and would you call yourself a Pats fan? I'm surprised I'm asking you this. No. So I'm finding out that you're not the perfect friend. You're like, you can be a friend, but you can't be a best friend because you're not a Patriots fan. So who would you root for in Washington?
Oh yeah, Washington. And my wife, I think she's more a Tom Brady fan than Patriots, honestly. But we went to DC last year, and she was wearing a Patriots shirt the whole weekend. I'm wearing the Redskins gear. Nice. And everybody's like, "Oh, divided home," whatever. But
right.
So it was interesting. But at that game, and Brady, of course, is Tom Brady after all. I mean, they were probably 50%, 50-50 for fans, maybe 60-40, honestly, in the Patriots' favor.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting.
Who won that one?
Patriots, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there any trouble afterward? Were you guys able to go home together?
Yeah.
Okay.
No problem.
Like, okay, we're taking separate cars. You get your own Uber. I'm out of here.
No. All good.
Yeah, man. Okay, cool. Well, there's like a bunch of stuff here. I've written a million things. What was that podcast where you talked more about the rebrand, in case people want to hear more about that stuff?
Yeah, you bet. That's on authenticstorytelling.net/rebrand. There you go. How's that for an easy URL? Okay. And of course, you can find that on all the different podcast channels as well. Pandora. I'm on Pandora now. That's kind of cool. Is that
even happened. A thing? I thought that was like the OG thing, the old school.
No, so Pandora has now rolled out podcasting, right? There's just shy of 10,000 the last time I looked.
Okay.
And you have to go through a little bit of a process to get approved. And so I did that and get the business storytelling podcast approved. And actually, I blogged about that as well on authenticstorytelling.net.
Man, your content is on point. Everything you were talking about, you have a blog post for.
Of course.
Legit.
And, I think that there's value in being on Pandora just because it's only 10,000, right?
Right.
And like I'm in the business category, and there's under 900 business podcasts. So, and you have to get approved. So there is a little bit of, I don't want to say status, but you can show off that your podcast is the real deal or close to it. So that was cool to be on there. And then the other thing is, and it's hard. So my metrics are aggregated in Anchor, which works fine for the most part. But there's a big category that says other, which is starting. So Apple has still the most listens all the time, no matter what I do. It doesn't make any difference. Always has the most listens. Even when I do emails and send them other places, doesn't make any difference.
I know, right?
And I'm so surprised because the Apple Podcast app, I find it's just the worst app.
It's the absolute worst app. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Right? It's
what do you
glitchy.
Listen to on? What do you listen to?
I listen on Google Podcasts.
Oh, interesting.
And yep. So I was listening on Spotify for a while, but then Spotify didn't update, blah, blah, blah. And so I think Google Podcasts is the best one currently, and who knows, can probably change. And what was I going to say? Oh, so Anchor has like this. So Apple Podcast, number one, super surprising to me because the app is terrible.
Right.
But the next section is other, which keeps creeping up. And I think it's going to take Apple over at some point. But as far as I can tell, the other category entails Pandora, Google Podcasts, and then everything else, other than like Spotify and Breaker
the main
or whatever.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So, some of those are broken out, but Pandora and Google are in there for sure. And so I'm guessing it looks like people are listening on Pandora. It also looks like people are listening on Google Podcasts.
Okay.
One other reason why I think it's cool to be on Pandora is because my prediction is that Pandora will at some point capitalize on having podcasts. So, for example, if I on my Taylor Swift station, who just has a new album out, in case you didn't hear. And my Taylor Swift station, right? Like, it doesn't just play Taylor Swift. It plays, Selena Gomez, other people like that, right? And it, like, sometimes you're like, why do I have to listen to this person? I don't even like this person. But Pandora thinks it's related. So why doesn't Pandora, once in a while, serve me a podcast that they think is related, right? In my regular stations. So I think that's where they're going to be able, if they choose to go that route, but to even push their podcast, because right now they're kind of hidden. I mean, like, it's not easy to listen to them. They even say this themselves. They say, you don't subscribe to podcasts, you add them to your collections. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, now, what do I do?
Word. Why don't they just use human words? That's crazy.
Right. So, but I think that's what they should do, to use them as recommendations when people do other things. And then that's a way, people can listen to them.
Yeah, aggregating it all. You mentioned the Spotify. You mentioned Spotify. Like Pandora, I think that's what I used before Spotify. And then I had a chance. Someone was like, hey, check this thing out. I was like, oh, sign me up. I'm sold. Been a customer for years since then. Never looked back at Pandora because it's worth to pay the thing and I just get all the things I want. But I could see, Pandora, if they try to be the other one, in that. I mean, there's iTunes and they're doing their thing, but if Pandora was just like the other version of Spotify, then maybe, and to your point, they did a better job of discovery. Then maybe there's something there. But like Spotify, they're probably doubling down on podcasts now.
Is it raining?
Is it raining now? No. Well, no. Real quick, Spotify. They're the ones that paid Joe Rogan like $1 million for 1 year of exclusive content. Just 1 year. So I could see them really going for the podcast arena, and then maybe Pandora tries to jump in there and like, look at me, guys, I'm here too. It's like, okay, Pandora, what do you got? If they maybe had a competing offer, maybe just a little bit less cost, maybe, I don't know, but I'll definitely check out Pandora. Right? Maybe I'll be the only. No, I mean, the other thing is there's a bunch of marketing podcasts, but it's like the sketchy pyramid scheme marketing, and it's really hard to show up for marketing because there's like business marketing, and then there's like, let's get people to buy our vitamins marketing,
Right.
So I only rank internationally. I don't rank in the US. I'm like top 100 in France. Vive la France.
Now number 12 in Hungary.
Right, exactly. In Australia and all that. Yeah, man. So interesting. Pandora. Well, you got it all. One quick question I have. You've got it all coordinated. I mentioned this earlier. You've got, every time you mention a topic, you've got a podcast on it. You probably got a blog post on it. Where does it start? Does it start with an idea, and then do you have like a chain? Do you have a sort of a process you follow, or how do you get complete coverage across everything?
Yeah, kind of. So sometimes what I do with projects, with companies, is I try to really coordinate it, right? So it starts with a podcast. You get all the experts on the podcast, they talk it through, and then you go from there. Then you have the podcast, you have the video. I mean, you do the same thing, right? We're talking here, you have a podcast, you have the YouTube video. The next step is you do live streams. So for example, the thing I did with Patty Shutta, we did a live stream on LinkedIn. I put the video on YouTube. I extracted the audio, had to edit it a little bit because there was a couple of glitches. that were fine on the video version, but they made no sense on the audio version, right? And then now usually the next step would be you take that content and you write an article from it for your blog. And here's the reason. We don't want to force people. And then after that, I'll get back to that in a second. And then you want to have campaigns to promote it, right? Social, organic, paid campaigns. You test certain things and you see what works and what doesn't work. Google Ads, I think, is currently one of the better ones, honestly, in my opinion, especially if you can get people to click early on, right? Your cost goes down.
Right.
So that's a good one. Email marketing for sure. But you want to test that, of course. But you don't want to force people. So if somebody wants to listen on Google Podcasts, they can listen there. Fine by me. If they want to listen on Apple, fine by them. Fine by me as well. But I usually try to, if I have a choice, I'll send you to my website, right? And so I always set that up. So I always usually use the link on the website, so they go there. And here's the reason you want people on your website, because once you come to my website, you're now in my remarketing pool, right? So the second I decide to run a campaign, or if I'm already running one, you are already in that pool. And you're not in that pool if you're listening on Google. Now, I'll rather take you listening at all versus not listening, right, on Google.
Right.
But there is an advantage to send people to your website, because then they come into your pool and you can retarget and remarket it to them. And I know you do this on your show. Always link to your website, find something related. The other day I did a SEO audit, and you know what was showing up? I had set up a Flipboard magazine. And just because I was thinking about the distribution, right? And Flipboard accepted it and it worked, blah, blah, blah. It's an official magazine. But the link from Flipboard was counting as a link for SEO purposes. And Flipboard, has like a 98 domain authority score, or something like that. And I didn't even think about that, right? So every time you can get somebody linked to you or whatever, I would highly recommend that. Also, I always try to send people, if I see a reason to do it when it makes sense, send people an embed code. Like I did a show with Ashley Cummings, who did a big report on freelance writing rates. So it's kind of interesting. She did the report, and it immediately went to the top 5 of all time listened to podcasts on my show, right?
Really?
Business Storytelling. Yep. So it's number 1 is Adweek. So Adweek is like that parody Twitter account, right? And their writer came on the show, and one of the first times he publicly talked about it. So of course, like everybody wants to hear that, right? And that's
right.
So that's hard to top, quite frankly. I think the second one might be where I'm talking about how to decide how to handle corrections to web content. That's just me talking. No idea why that's went up there. Third one is Scott Brinker talking about the marketing landscape. Number 4 was Mel Roth, who's based in Germany, and he talked about why content, what's with all the content that doesn't go deep enough. And then the 5th one was Ashley, and it immediately went up, right? So I'm like, awesome. So it's really hitting a nerve. And so, but she already had written about the report too, because it's like a gated report.
Yeah.
And so I sent her the embed code for the podcast. So she published the embed code with her landing page, right? So always find ways to make it easy and, collaborate. I mean, figure out a way to use all the content.
That's a really good point. It's interesting about what catches and what drives people's attention. And also, I mean, it's a good reminder that SEO is still alive and well, even if it's, kind of reduced down now with super smart Google AI doing its thing. It still matters getting links from important places. Yeah.
And getting links is harder and harder. I mean, people don't link to you. I mean, there was one publication I worked with recently, and they didn't even allow a link back. And I'm like, then what's the point of writing for them? Like, name recognition, I guess. But
oh, really?
I mean,
a link back from their site to your author page?
Yeah.
Really? That's too much? Yeah. They don't want to. Wow, weenie.
I know, right?
Weenie.
So,
you want to out them on here?
No.
That's okay, man. You really got me though with the. You want them to hit your website because then you got the retargeting cookie on there.
Mhm.
And I think I need to step up my retargeting game for sure. We've got it in the roadmap, but it makes perfect sense. It's one way of getting people's attention pretty definitively, because it costs money, over email and over any other thing. To your point,
Yeah.
social's changed. Social is, some it's pay to play, and some of it's just wacky, and you may see, people may see it, they may not see it. You got to repeat yourself, but at least with retargeting, you can start having ad banners there. I mean, I checked out, I think it was like email clicker or something the other day on a podcast, and they retargeted me the next day, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But to be able
Yeah.
to pick and choose, like, oh, we've got a thing coming out, let's go ahead and get this message out to everyone that hit our microsite. That makes
Mhm.
total sense.
Yeah, and the other thing, one word of caution though, especially if you're running a content performance culture model, um, keep an eye on your metrics. So I'll give you an example. Every once I write an article, and it is for my audience, but it takes off for other reasons. So, for example, I wrote about Facebook avatars, right?
Yeah.
When they came out, and it blew up, had like, I don't know, 6,000 views in 2 days or something. And I bet you most of those views were not my target audience, right?
Right.
Maybe like at the edges, but I doubt 6,000. I mean, I think there were a lot of consumers in there probably who were trying to figure out how to use them. And so what happens is when you get an article that takes off like that, it just increases your retargeting, right, for the next 30 days,
Oh,
and you run through your budget quicker. So you just want to be aware of that and kind of like make educated guesses.
yeah.
Most of the time, if your content is spot on for your audience, it's not a big deal. There's one project I'm working on, and the website, the conversion rate is lower than what I thought it should be, but the content on there, it's only for that specific job function. So
Got it.
if you go to that page by mistake, you're like, why am I here? Like, I don't care, right? So
Good.
I take it as like a disqualifier, and it's not a big deal
Yeah.
because it just means that not everybody is necessarily qualified.
That's a good point, man. I used to do some ads for language learning software, and we'd be surprised because we would go look in the negatives before the person who set it up didn't set up negatives. So there were, I mean, it was some broad matching, sort of
Mm-hmm.
loose terminology, and it might be like learn Spanish, but then it's like learn Spanish soap operas wasn't
Right.
negated, and so people would search for like Spanish soap operas. They'd see your learn Spanish ad. It's not what they're looking for, but they'd still click it and they'd
Yep.
go. It's like it's just as important to get to eliminate and negate and suppress as much as it is to accept, and not be worried about your ego metrics of I have 1,000 people, but yeah, if they're the wrong people, then your conversion's going to stink. And then also you're going to pay a lot more money in other ways, like you described.
Yep.
Boom. There it is, man. Hey, talk to me about the voice thing. Cause I know we're getting into, podcasts and whatnot, but I know you're a big fan,
Yep.
and you're also smart into these voice apps. I'm a little creeped out myself. I don't want them listening to my family and all that, but I feel like it's the future. At some point I'm gonna be the old man or the only guy who doesn't have, Amazon Echo or one of those things in my
and
house.
and you don't even need it to use it. That's what's so interesting about it. So first of all, I want to give a shout out here. This is Voice Strategy. Susan and Scott Westwater, definitely worth checking out. Very, very informative read. They were also, I know you were going to say that on the Business Storytelling podcast, talking about voice strategy.
Yes, they were.
Of course they were. Very, very informative how they talk about it. They're very specialized at that topic. From my perspective, I think it is part of the future. It's already millions and millions of people have devices that use voice. What's interesting to me, you don't actually need a device to use voice, right? So like my iPhone has voice. We're not going to say her name, right? Because the iPad will go off.
What do you have to
which
do?
is
Say,
sitting,
hey Siri, and does that
for
mess up your
example,
iPad?
right. If I say that, the iPad will go off, and if I really have bad luck, the phone which I'm using to record with you will go off as
So
well.
I can
That
say it,
actually,
but you have earbuds in, so it won't mess you up.
it won't hear
Yeah.
it. Correct.
But anybody on speakerphone that hears like, hey Siri, maybe it'll
Yeah.
pop up for
Yeah.
them. Okay.
So, but what's interesting is, so when I first started putting stuff on voice devices, so people use them. but it is kind of tricky. I mean, there's Facebook groups where people ask, how do I do this on Amazon Echo? How do I do this on blah, blah, blah?
Right.
And like, how do I set this up? So it's not as easy as it could be, even though it's come a long way. From a
Right.
content perspective, like I used to have to go into the Alexa developer console and set up a blueprint for my podcast. I'm like, oh my God, I'm already bored just listening to myself say that
Yeah.
sentence.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but you had to go in there and it was quite a bit of work. And today, literally, so your podcast, if you're on Apple, I'm sure you are,
Yeah.
your podcast is available through voice command. Like people can literally go to their phone and say, hey, play the Hardcore Marketing podcast, and Siri will do it.
Hey Siri. Would you just play? Here we go. Play the Hardcore Marketing Show. Oh. Oh.
Did it work?
I think so. Oh, yeah. There it is.
See?
Yeah.
There you go. See, that's how easy it is. Like
Wow,
you didn't have to set up a blueprint. You didn't have
that
to
was
do
through
anything.
Apple, right? Because
That's through Apple.
Guess, yeah. Because it's playing on the Apple app as well.
So there you go. That's how people. And so every once in a while I tweet a thing and say, here's how you play my podcast on your iPhone. On Alexa, it's a little bit harder to do because so now you go into Alexa, you can set up a skill, and there's many ways to do that. But the easiest way for podcast distribution, honestly, you just tell people to type Spotify to their Alexa. And as long as you're on Spotify, same thing. You don't need a skill. You don't need anything.
What do you tell? You tell Alexa, hey, play this thing, it's on Spotify, or does it just know it's on Spotify?
I'm not sure. I don't remember. But yeah, something like that.
That's cool. So where is this all heading to, you think?
Well, voice, I think, is going to become easier and easier. I mean, right now it's still kind of all over the place. Honestly, devices don't understand you. It's not working. I mean, I have an Apple Watch. I use voice on there all the time, right? I'm telling it to text my wife or I'm whatever.
Oh, really? And it works out well?
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's what I mean. Like sometimes it doesn't understand you or whatnot. So, but I think it's going to become easier and easier for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think people will use it. I mean, I go to the gym, and so my gym doesn't have key cards anymore. You have to use an app, right? So literally, when I pull up, I just push Siri and I say, open path, which is the app that unlocks it.
Nice.
So I get out of the car and the app is open, right? And then I just wave my phone at the door and the door opens. So, I mean, I would have never thought about doing that 2 years ago, even a year ago, or even 4 months ago.
Yeah, I'm excited for the changes to happen. It was a couple of weeks ago, I was trimming some tree branches down. I realized it's one of the most fun things I've ever done is like being this arborist, trimming my pine trees on a ladder high in the trees. And I think, was I asking Siri something, or maybe I accidentally said something related to it. And then she went like, and she said in this it was almost kind of this like provocative, like intriguing way. She's like, oh, what'd you say, Casey? Like, huh? And I was like, whoa. And I was like, let's have a conversation. But then she didn't understand anything else I said. So it's like, I think it just continues to get closer and closer.
Well, I was mowing one day, I had my AirPods in, and so I put whatever you double tap it, and I said something like, hey, text Sophie, my daughter, and tell her to pick something up, whatever it was in the backyard. And Siri goes, okay, calling Chris so-and-so, who was in my phone, but I haven't talked to in like 10 years.
Oh, no.
So the phone call is being initiated, and my phone is in my pocket. So it's not perfect yet, but it's certainly getting better. Like everything, right? Everything, when there is potential, gets better over time.
And we talked about getting getting podcasts on there, but what about, do you see it in a B2B setting or or consumer setting? I mean, yeah, you can buy toilet paper with Amazon, but where do you think it goes? Do you think we're eventually using it for all the things, or is there limitations?
Well, of course there are limitations.
Yeah.
I mean, even, I was talking to Roger Dooley, who wrote the book Friction, And he said, Amazon has the whole one-step checkout patented, right? And when they did that in the 90s, nobody thought anybody would care. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
one-button checkout.
Yeah. If you got your stuff saved, your address and your credit card, you just one swipe and it's done.
Right.
You got that patented?
Yeah, like 20 years ago.
Jeez.
And so nobody else can use it. And but I never use it, right? So it's interesting, and I don't use it because I love getting that little. So when you don't use Prime, like when you use a little slower delivery, you get like the $1 back, like the $1 for digital items. I do that all the time. So that's how I buy my Kindle books, right? I buy like 8 things, and now I got $8. And I know it's super cheap. It sounds kind of cheap, but what do I care if it gets here 2 days later?
Right.
And so it's interesting because just because it's a good way to do it doesn't mean people will do it, right? They might have or they might like the shopping. They might like looking, I mean, earlier I was looking for a hat and it was on Amazon at a certain price, and I went to MLB store or shop or whatever it's called, and it was a little cheaper on there. So I don't know. I think some people will probably use it when we get there. I still like to kind of look, but again, people said, oh, I like to hold the newspaper in my hands, and we all see where newspaper circulation is going, right? For print.
Right.
And I actually get the printed newspaper every day, but I never read it ever. So it's kind of weird. Like, I got it because I used miles to get it. There wasn't very many miles, but I read the digital edition on my iPad.
Oh, really?
And the print edition lays outside. Unless my wife reads it, it goes straight into the recycling. But of course, 20 years ago, I would have said, "Oh yeah, I like holding the newspaper." So opinions change for sure.
Right, and I guess if it's a nice, I don't know if it's like a nice lightweight iPad Nano or something that it was just it feels good to hold it. But yeah, I could see that shift happening. And come wintertime, you've got fire starting material. You got the newspaper into the fireplace. Do you have a fireplace?
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, what else would you start it with, right? Do you start with paper?
I think it's like electric. You just flip the switch.
Oh, you don't have like a real fireplace?
No.
See, I got a real fireplace. That was the only thing I wanted. I want a porch to grill on and a real fireplace. That was my only requirements. Nice. So you have to give me all your newspapers, and I'll make use of them.
Definitely like the grilling here in Iowa, Casey. We have the homegrown cows, and that's always a treat for sure.
Yes, homegrown.
Homegrown.
Man, cool. I will check that out. And what's the book called by Susan Scott?
Voice Strategy.
Voice Strategy.
See, so this is another reason why I need to send you a copy of my book. But this is another reason why sometimes it's a good idea to send out copies of your book, because every once in a while, like, I know you didn't do it, but every once in a while somebody goes, "What's a book you want to recommend on a podcast?" And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, so I have these books laying over here, right? One is Voice Strategy, and the other one is from Adweek, and they're just easy.
That's cool.
Adweek, yeah, they're easy fallbacks. So I thought about that the other day, because like every time I have something to say, I just grab them,
right?
Which is kind of
smart. I mean, I've got Deb's book, Irrational Loyalty, here, right?
Yeah.
So to your point, yeah. Do you have mine?
I don't. We should exchange them.
Let's exchange books. That'll be fantastic. We'll send you one. Yeah, you got to send me yours too, so I can hold it up and be like, I just talked to this guy who knows everything.
Yeah.
So, what's coming up for you? You got some interviews coming up, books, blogs. What's new?
So I use Calendly just like you do to schedule all my podcast interviews. And I think the last time I looked, there's like 18 interviews booked.
Jeez.
So I have it set now that I only accept one per day. So once somebody books a day, nobody else can take that day.
Nice.
And it's a relatively small time period each day. There's a couple days where it's like super early. So when I have people from like overseas, they actually have a relatively good time that they could pick, and not like 11 o'clock at night for them. But certainly I do that. The
One
podcast,
a day. That's cool. How long are yours again? Yeah, notice.
30 to 60 minutes
Okay.
typically. Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. Sometimes they're a little shorter, but not usually. 30 to 60 minutes is a
What do you prefer?
good
Do you
time.
prefer the quick wins, like the in,
I,
out, give me my
I
content?
I think it depends on what the topic is. Like the
Yeah.
ad week one was like half an hour, and
Yeah.
it's the highest performing one. Scott was maybe half an hour. So I think half an hour is probably a good time for a show. I don't know
Yeah.
that it needs to be much longer. I mean, it depends, right? I mean, it depends on how people listen too. I know nobody is
True.
commuting right now. Like if people commute a long way, they can listen to it. CNN has like the 2 minutes news roundup, and I almost think that's too short.
It
It's
sounds it sounds stressful.
it's like I turn it on and you go do something. By the time you like start listening actively,
Yeah.
they're already done.
Yeah, it sounds kind of stressful. Like, oh, right, because if you ever like don't pay attention for 5 seconds on an
Yeah,
audio book, you're wait, where are we? What's going on?
right.
So you zone out for 30 seconds in a 2-minute newsreel, and you're
That's a
gonna have to
quarter.
rewind it a little bit. Yeah, I just find everyone's got their own. I just do whatever I like to listen to, and sometimes
Yeah,
I'll go for a long run, or like you said, mowing the lawn, and you just got I'll have like Joe Rogan or somebody just in the
yeah,
back, and just listening to that. Sometimes it's the fun banter between people too. That's cool to hear.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you noticed that, but I put this out on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I think it's a new strategy people are doing where they repeat segments. So let's say we're talking about voice, right? So we talked about voice. I don't know what mark, like 30-minute mark, right? And now we're about 60 minutes in roughly. And then so you take that spot again, you put it at like the 70-minute mark, and you play it again, not the whole thing, but pieces of it, and something you really want people to hear. And so I've noticed this. So the first time I noticed it is I was like, oh, stupid internet. And I thought like the internet skipped or something. But it was like at a totally different spot. And then I heard it on another show and another show. I heard it a few times. I honestly think that might be too much work, honestly, to
Yeah,
do that.
yeah,
I mean, I sometimes, I mean, Anchor, I just put a video on YouTube actually explaining how to edit in Anchor.
yeah.
And it's so easy because you just go through your whole take. And like when there's a big pause, you just go in and you go delete, and it deletes it, right? Like not right then, but like it marks it as being ready to be deleted. And you keep going and you delete it and blah, blah, blah. And so like the other day I did a show and had like 16 segments, right? And then 16 segments, like 7 were marked for deletion because people were saying stuff that wasn't relevant, or do you know what I mean, or whatever, or there was a long pause.
Okay.
And then Anchor goes, would you like 16 segments or one segment? And then so if you click one, it puts them all together into one. It's like the
Wow.
easiest audio editing ever. And then I still just split it up and put like there's a mid-roll ad I usually put into shows. But I mean it's just so easy to use this technology.
I haven't used Anchor yet, but I'm really tempted, for like another podcast. I think I want to do one on adventure, and I'd be okay if nobody listened to it because I would just want to talk about, like get someone on and just talk about a
Mm-hmm.
camping trip or something, talk about a mountain
Yeah.
climb, but just kind of have an adventure one. I think I would try it on Anchor. I would want to experience what that's like, and because I do a lot of work on Podbean right now, and
Yeah.
there's some production time involved. But you'd be interesting to just kind of do it do it do it yourself kind of thing on Anchor.
Yeah, and sometimes I mean sometimes the edits are kind of weird, right? When depending on so the other on the one with Patty, we lost the connection. I had a phone call coming in while we were
Oh
live on the
geez.
air, so I had to decline it. But apparently she lost me for a second. So I'm like, oh, did you lose me? Yep. Okay, now you're back. I like on the live stream that's fine, but on the podcast version, like we don't need that on there. So I edited it out, but when she started, like I said, okay, welcome, Patty. And like you could hear her still laughing over what I just said, right? Like, so
Yeah.
like the laughing, like it was very quick. So I think most people probably wouldn't notice it. But she was laughing at something that I just cut, but I couldn't cut her laughing because like I'm talking,
Right.
you
Right.
know? So
Huh.
sometimes you get those, but yeah.
What do you, So it sounds like you do trim up that conversation, speed it up a bit by getting rid of the just sort of the pregnant pauses or the blanks. Do you get rid of us and ums too?
No, 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 no. And I
Okay.
edit very little,
Okay.
honestly.
Got it.
Just like if there are really long pauses, I do that. Let's see, I don't know what else happened. There was one show the other day, we had real bad connection issues. So I kind of cleaned that up a little bit. But
Yeah.
but if everything is going well, the conversation went well, like I will not even touch it. Like if people
Yeah.
misstep, I don't care. Like when Max Branster was on my show, I kept saying his podcast name wrong. I think it's very hard to pronounce. Wild Business Growth Podcast. I don't know why it's so hard
You said
for
wild
me.
business growth.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Okay.
But I think that's really hard to remember. I don't know why, but
It
but
could
anyway,
be. Yeah. I don't know.
we didn't change it. I said it wrong when we kicked off, and I said, "Well, it's so hard, Max. What's the name again?" And it was like one of the
Yeah.
top 5 most listened to, and then we kept kind of making fun of that and talking about, look, you don't have to be perfect. I'm like, look, I can't even say his podcast name correctly, and whatever. Now I'm learning it, right? Like you don't have to
Right.
be so perfect. So it depends on what we're doing. I will tell you this though, and I don't, for the most part, I don't kill episodes, but I do when people get too nitpicky or like they don't seem sure about that they really want to be on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like afterwards they follow up 8 times and say, "How did it go? How did it go?" And like usually that's a sign to me that something didn't go well, right?
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
when it's like their PR firm. So you know, yeah. Sometimes I circle back, but I've only done that a couple of times, like when it really didn't go well. And then you got to wait 2 months to get back on the schedule.
Right. Have you ever not published one?
Oh yeah, yeah, happened a couple times.
Was it like just like because I have one. I've got one that I published and it was just not a good. It was early on and I didn't realize the guests and who it should be, and it actually
Yeah,
came from a podcast booker, and sometimes those guys are great. Sometimes they send you people that have to pay to get onto a podcast, and it was
yeah,
basically like an SEO guy that was just saying all this stuff, and it was just wrong. So we actually ended in like 10 minutes. Person didn't even notice that we only ended in 10 minutes, and they never followed up, and it never went live because it was like you had to take a shower. So every single person listening would have to take a shower after listening to the podcast. So we never put it
hmm.
out.
Yeah. It's sometimes you got to do that. One time it was somebody, and it was just like every sentence, like I would have to edit every sentence, and honestly,
Really?
yeah, because it was always like or something happened every sentence.
Yeah.
It was just really, really strange. And then another one, it was just it didn't seem like they were happy with what they
Right.
talked about, and I just didn't want to get into it.
Right.
Quite frankly, because yeah, it's my time too. It's their time and my time. So
Right. Right. Yeah, I've gotten better at in my team too. We've gotten better at figuring out who would be a good person to talk to. And usually it's everyone. They're just it's just avoiding the pyramid scheme people, you know?
right,
You're like, "Oh, what kind of MLM should we talk about today? What kind of
yeah,
pyramid scheme?" Yeah, it's crazy. So, did I hear you're in Iowa? Or was that
correct, yep.
why did I think you were in New England?
I don't know. I was wondering about that earlier because you said,
Yeah,
"Are you a
up here
Patriots
with me and the
fan?"
Patriots fan. You're like, no, idiot. But Washington Redskins doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, they were good when I was growing up in Germany.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
that's kind of how that happened.
Because I know we talked about that, but I guess I forgot your location, and I went to Twitter just to try to remind myself. But you don't have it on there, huh? That's
No,
more worldly.
because location is irrelevant. Plus, so funny stories when I was working for Scribble and I was flying around the world working for him. One of the marketing guys, I think it was actually one of the guys in Germany, said, "You really got to stop saying you're from Iowa." And I'm like, when you talk to like a client or a prospect,
Yeah.
and you go, "Yeah, I'm from Iowa," and he goes, "Nobody knows where the heck that is."
Wow.
you know And I was like, well, what should I say? West of Chicago. So I got a blog post on this whole story too, of course.
Of course you do.
Yeah, west of Chicago. Well, that's technically true, but that's
True.
like 4 hours,
West of
Uh,
Washington, D.C.
yeah. So Cedar Rapids. Okay. Well, you just say Cedar Rapids. So I just say Cedar Rapids usually. Very few people honestly ask. And even, usually the response is, oh, yeah. Yeah, I've heard of it. And they don't have any clue. That's fine. Better than Iowa, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of people who have stories about Cedar Rapids or Iowa where they've been here, they know somebody or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the third response is, oh yeah, there's a lot of like when I was in interior design, doing some projects there and working in that industry, people would go, oh, there's a lot of interior design firms in Grand Rapids. And, which of course, Grand Rapids is different from Cedar Rapids. But
right. Michigan. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But they only heard the rapids. And I'm like, oh yeah, they are. Yep. Like steel caves and
well, it's small, right? Well, no, it's not small. Here I'm in New Hampshire calling Iowa smaller.
Well, how many people are in New Hampshire?
Okay. Right. Good question. I have no idea. People keep asking me how many people are in my city, and I don't even know. I look it up every time. So, like, Iowa, you got area.
So we're about over 2 times bigger than New
3.1 million.
Yeah, and you were 1.4.
I'm at 1.4. Oh, so we're smaller in people size. New Hampshire is what I can relate, right? New Hampshire, usually I'll say in like networking or, events in California or something, I'll say, oh, I'm near Boston,
Right.
People usually know Boston either from the Patriots or just like the Boston Tea Party or something. And so they're like, oh, Boston. And then someone else will say, I'm Boston too. And then we'll say, okay, where? Oh, I'm New Hampshire. I'm actually not, up here in Nashua. And like, oh, I'm in Westchester or something. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. And I think I've only had one person not know it was a state, but you never know.
Huh.
They're like, oh, you're from England? I'm like, no, I'm not from England. It's the New Hampshire, not the old Hampshire. Crazy. Well, sweet, man. Well, I actually asked this earlier. I don't know if you mentioned, so do you have any, another book on the line, like any kind of long-term plans you're thinking of? Like any big moves you're going to make?
Yeah, probably not right this second. So the last one just came out in January, but this year alone, I haven't looked at the numbers like super recently, but I was definitely over 100,000 words blogged for 2020 already. And the last book, which is pretty thick, right? So, look, it's pretty thick.
That's thick,
it's like a textbook. And that was like 35,000 or something like that. So, you could like theoretically write 3 books with 100,000 words.
Sure.
So I'm sure at some point I'll go, hey, what do I have a topic on? And what do I turn into a book? Is there a market? Has anybody talked about it? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So probably, I'll probably do that again. The biggest problem with book sales during COVID is, so my first book, most copies were actually sold in connection with conferences, right? So every time I go speak somewhere, the conference would buy a few hundred books, right? So you have 400 conferences, let's say 500 people, each. That's like 2,000 copies right there, and that's just 4 conferences.
Jeez.
And there hasn't been any conferences at all. It's just been literally online and
for sure.
Haven't gone anywhere. So probably at some point we'll see how soon. It's still a lot of work finishing it, even if you have most of the content already.
Right. Yeah, we end up ordering we have a couple of boxes of these books at the office because we're planning on giving them out at events. And, with all the events being canceled, I still have these boxes of books. So, by the way, anyone listening, if you want a copy of my book, email me, Casey@CheshireImpact.com, and I will send you one because I have them, and they don't do anyone any good sitting in a cardboard box. So, but yeah, they're just taking up office space. So I want to get them out, get them out. Do you have a whole pile of them yourself, or are you doing it more one-off, like one at a time?
So what I do is, so people can actually order signed copies from me, and I'll send you one. And what I do is I usually have like 5 at hand.
Yeah.
So, 5 at a time. So I don't know how many I have currently. But once I go below the 5, I'll order 5 more. Right.
From where?
So I
Where
don't,
do you
from,
from the publisher? Or?
yeah. So it's published through, Kindle Direct. Right.
Oh, gotcha.
And so behind the scenes, you can order author copies. So my first book, it was like the end of the year. I was like, oh, I can buy a bunch of books. Well, most of those books are still sitting here because,
Right. Exactly, me
like,
too.
because
Yeah.
if I send books to a conference, I would never send them from here, right? They're like one-offs. And now I
Right.
send some of those old ones when I send out books, like I just add them like as a special gift, as a surprise, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's like, I don't want to go much above, having 5 lying around, because then who knows how long that takes to get rid of them. 5 isn't too bad. I think it's like $3 a book when you order them behind the
Right.
scenes. So,
Nice.
but yeah, that's kind of what I do. And then if I got to ship like a bunch to like a conference, I just do it directly behind the scenes and ship it to them, so I don't have to travel with 300 copies or
Travel
something
with
like
the
that.
books. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good call. Good call, man. Well, hey, why don't you throw out I know we've had the URL already, but where are the different places people can connect with you? If it's the first time they're hearing from you, definitely go check out the other episode. But all the social platforms and your blog and your podcast, all that stuff.
Yeah, of course. So the book is available at contentperformance.online. That's a new URL if you haven't heard about that, .online. And authenticstorytelling.net is the blog. LinkedIn, connect with me there if you like. ctrap.online/LinkedIn. That sends you there. Or Twitter, of course, ctrap on Twitter. Always happy to connect. And the podcast, just ask Siri to play
That's
Christoph
right.
Trappe Business Storytelling Podcast.
Oh, wait, what do you ask Siri? I interrupted you there. Ask Siri.
So it's actually called Business Storytelling Podcast, but I think it only works when you say Christoph Trappe Business Storytelling Podcast.
Okay.
But I haven't tried it in a little bit. So
Play around with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet, man. Well, I'm glad you came back on here. I just wanted to like catch up and chat, and obviously I can't help but learn things from you every single time.
Of
It's a lot of
course.
fun.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Always appreciate it.
Right on, man. Well, this will be one of many, I'm sure. So for the people listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I have 2 pages of notes, front and back, ran out of space in the margins. Share this with someone. Be a thought leader. Right? You don't just share it, but like put what your takeaways are. What did you learn? What were some key takeaways? And there's a bunch here. There's some good stuff. Getting people to your website so you can retarget them. That voice book will be interesting to check out. All the different episodes, idea of Pandora. I'm going to go get this. I'm going to get this thing on Pandora. Stat. Buffer, the different social shares and how socials change. There's so much stuff we talked about today. So definitely share this with other people. And again, Christoph, thanks, man. It's good hanging out with you. Learn something every day.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
You bet, man. Well, for everyone listening, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We'll catch you all next time.